What's up, guys? It's Transcend. Welcome back to another This Week in Tracks. It's the first week of October, and we had some bangers come out this week, so we're going to be going through every single track that released this week in MX Bikes, both free and paid, so that we can determine if they are worth the download or worth the purchase. We started the week off with a banger. Bishop Builds came out with Bojangles, Chicken Supreme MX. Love the name. The track is fantastic. The textures are amazing. The environment is really cool. You've got the track markers, the trees on the outside, the signage, even the details like the little water trucks on the side. It just feels like he really put some time and effort into this one. And on top of that, the track just flows. It's got some cool elevation changes, some cool jumps. The corners are fine. They hold you well. So I would say this is a definite download for me. Flying in the Fall by Gray. Now this one is your pretty basic track. I would say I could see myself playing this whenever I first started the game. It's got some great corners, some great, I would say, throttle control areas. So if you're new to the game and you're working on bike control and maneuvering the bike around tracks, I think this is going to be a great track. He did an awesome job with the track textures. Obviously the environment, there's not too much around the track, but just the border with the fall trees and the wind turbines and stuff like that. I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Nothing really complaint-wise. The jumps are built fairly well, size-wise, jump faces, everything. There's nothing that's like super weird and that throws you off balance or out of whack. So I would say this is a definite cop if you're newer to the game and want a track that you can just spin laps on and practice the craft. A1 TH Visuals Training Facility by Thunder MX. This one I'm a little on the fence about. It was pretty fun to spin laps on, but there was definitely, I don't want to say shortcomings, but kind of maybe a little bit. The transitions, I would say, in between the obstacles were a little abrupt and a little weird, which kind of made the track not have as much flow as I feel like it could have if just those transitions were a little bit more smoothed out. But other than that, I mean, the track itself, the scaling of the jumps, the faces of the jumps, everything is solid. So I think that if you're a newer Supercross player and you don't have too much time on a Supercross track, then this might be a good track to learn on for sure. The whoops, don't give you too much grief, which is always nice. So definitely if you're a newer Supercross player, then this would probably be a good track for you to get. Vmy MX by Dr. Nobel. I'll go ahead and just get it right out of the way. I think this one takes the cake this week as far as environments on the free tracks. He absolutely killed it with the autumn feel, the fall feel around this track. The only downside and kind of weird part of this track that I feel like is just kind of the ruts. They've got weird roughness in them and kind of they're built up like walls. So that's really my only downside on this. The layout is really fun, and the track itself, it's got some big booters like this one coming up here that you can really send it off of. So it's definitely a fun track to spin laps on. I could see maybe like a Lynn's E-Lim or something on this, But other than that, it's definitely a solid download. That was completely planned. Something else I wanted to shout out about this track is the leaves and the ruts. Like I said, environment-wise, as far as the fall feel, the leaves and the ruts are a very nice touch, so just wanted to make sure I pointed that out. Bravo on that. final free track of the week, CCRL PKA City MX by Vmy MX. I'll go ahead and go out and say it. I'm not a big fan of this one. The PKA City layout IRL isn't very fun either, so it's not really any surprise to me that, you know, the in-game one, it doesn't really flow all that well. The ruts don't feel all that great. They don't really hold you at all. Your front end always wants to leave them, so yeah, not really any flow to the track. The textures are a little weird. You kind of want to slide out when you wouldn't expect to. So overall, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of it. Hopefully it races well for the guys that are doing the Ponca race this week, but yeah, just not my cup of tea for sure. Other than the track's environment, obviously not too much around either. You can tell it's fall, so I'm not sure what the timeline was on building this, but being that it's, you know, an amateur national, it might have been cool to see like some RVs on the side or something like that, or even just some track markers. You know, it kind of just seems like the track's out in the field and the banners are more like the spectator fences, not like the track barrier banners. So maybe some more environmental stuff would have made it a little cooler too. But yeah, obviously this is a free track, and I know Steezy has made some really cool tracks in the past, so nothing against him as a track creator. I'm stoked on all the track creators and that it's growing so much as a community within MX bikes. Just not a huge fan of this one, that's all. Our first paid track of the week is Dreamland by Fluke Creations. You get one motocross track and one supercross track for $2 on the MX Bike Shop. I think that Fluke killed it with the textures on this track and the environment. It looks pretty sweet. Obviously, it's a home track, so it's not going to have, you know, all the bells and whistles of like a racing track. So it kind of feels like it's on somebody's private property, and I think that's pretty sweet. The track itself is pretty challenging, not like super challenging, but just, you know, it's not like a beginner track, I would say. It's got some challenging sections to it. It's got some roughness. You know, it's got some cool ruts that hold you pretty well that you can hold it wicked through. I've never been really too much of a fan of the Dreamland layout itself or any of the Dreamland like tracks that have been made, but I would say that this is the best one that we've got so far, so he definitely killed it with this. One complaint that I do have on this though would definitely be the like color. I play my game with no reshades on it while I'm racing and riding and stuff, so this is how it looks in base game raw, and it's just super orange. It's a little bit too orange. It kind of gives me a headache a little bit to play too long, so maybe just a little bit more of like a natural sand color would be cool, but like I said, that's the only issue that I have with this track. The Supercross track is pretty fun. It definitely has the feel like you're on the East Coast in Florida, Georgia, which I'm pretty sure is where Dreamland is actually located. So Fluke definitely did a good job kind of recreating that feeling and that sort of texture and vibe, as well as the ruts lend itself to that too. You can tell it's a softer dirt just because he built, you know, some ruts and some degradation into the jumps and stuff. It's a little bit challenging too, so it's definitely, you know, if you're kind of learning Supercross tracks and getting into it, this might be a good one to push yourself on and kind of fine tune your timing of things. And on that note too, the scaling of everything feels really good. It's not too small, but it's just big enough that you feel like you've got to kind of send it to get over some stuff. So overall, I would say that Dreamland for me is going to be a cop. I think it's worth the $2 in comparison to other things on the shop. Next up on the paid track list is Derna Moto Club by Callum KTM 222. This is based off of a real track over in the Netherlands, and it's one of those tracks, if you're a fan of the MXGP Lommel 2013 track, I think you're going to really like this track. You just kind of hold it wide open, bounce through the sand. Sometimes you can find some cool lines where you're doubling or tripling through the rollers, and yeah, it's one of those, it's a sand track, you know? You're holding it wicked, you're trying not to wash the front. I think for $1.50, I'm on the fence about whether it's worth $1.50 just in comparison to prices of other things on the shop. But if you're a fan of sand tracks, then I would say that significantly increases the value of it to you. So I would say this would definitely be a cop if you are in the market for a good sand track to ride. But if you're just kind of looking for another track to spin laps on, then, you know, might not be the best bang for your buck, being that you only get one track for it. So other than that, the textures are great. The attention to detail is awesome. The trackside banners and stuff, the fences, the trees, the environment definitely feels cool. So yeah, no, I had a good time spinning laps on this track, and I would say if you're a fan of sand tracks, then definitely pick this one up. Round 7 of the Oceana MXB series coming in with flips. This track flows pretty good. It is a sand track, so it's got some roughness and some whoops. The textures look pretty good. I'm usually honestly not too big of a fan of the Oceana tracks. I just don't think they always flow that well. This one, I would say, is my favorite of the bunch so far. So if you are a fan of the previous Oceana tracks, then I would imagine you'll probably like this one just as much. So yeah, definitely solid. $1.50 on the shop. I'm 50-50 on the pricing. Like I said, we've kind of got some good bang for your buck this week on tracks. So, but like I said, if you've been a fan of the previous ones, then yeah, absolutely. And of course, there's a season pass too, where you can get a deal if you get all the tracks. So that kind of definitely makes it a little bit more worth it as well. Next on the list of paid tracks is the 2025 SIRL test track by Austin Crank. This one's $1 on the shop, and honestly, I think this one got a decent amount of hate, but I'm not really too sure why. The textures of everything is pretty solid, like the smoothness in the whoops, the tractor marks in the corners and on the step-on, step-offs and everything. I mean, he definitely has some good attention to detail. The track flows pretty well, like it's a pretty solid, fun track to spin laps on. The scaling feels pretty good as well on the jumps, so yeah, not sure why it would really get too much hate. It feels pretty good, honestly. I'm kind of a fan of it. In comparison to like the Free track that we went over earlier, I like the transitions on this one a little bit better. The jumps are a little bit more rounded over, so they're definitely a lot more forgiving than a lot of the Supercross tracks that you might ride, I don't know, any other of the Supercross tracks, but they still throw you pretty high up, and you can still catch some pretty good air on them. So something else to mention as far as attention to details is the first track in the paid ones of the week, where I've noticed the birds chirping, so it kind of adds to the environment. It feels like you're in the middle of the forest. I think it's a pretty sick track. I'd cop it. Next up, we got WWE Practice Day by T-Bell. This one's pretty sick. It's kind of a sand track, pretty wide open. The ruts hold you pretty well, although if you get over the ruts, they do send you flying into oblivion, so that's something to keep in mind that I know nobody's too big of a fan of, but beautiful scenery, textures are really sick. Track is decently rough, so you definitely have to practice some bike control. I think this is a really good sort of intermediate track if you're relatively new, but working on getting a little bit better on control while you're in the roughness and in the ruts and everything like that. Good track for that. I think it's kind of a nice middle ground that's good for pros and for maybe some noobs. So definitely a pretty sweet track, and of course it's got some booters where you can get pretty steezy off of too. So for only $1, I think this is pretty sick. For the final paid track of the week, we've got another 2-track compound coming in here with the Vmy Compound by Aten 116. Sorry if I mispronounced that. This track's pretty sick. I wasn't expecting too much just because the graphic and everything, I mean, it looks sick, but it looks more, I'm not sure how many tracks that this creator has made, but I'm a big fan of this one. It has the same sort of vibe as like Wildcat Summit Raceway and Canyonlands and all that, where it sort of has like that MX Unleashed sort of arcade dirt bike feel, you know what I mean? This track's definitely fun to spin laps on. It's pretty long, so it definitely makes it not so repetitive. You can honestly sit on this track for like an hour or two and not even realize how fast time's gone by. This outdoor track's definitely sick. We're going to get into the Supercross track, which I think is not quite as good, but he definitely killed it with this outdoor track. The textures, the environment, the sounds, the scenery, getting close to the ocean right here. I think it flows really well, so I'm a big fan of this track, and especially for $1 for 2 tracks on the store, this is pretty much a steal, so I would cop it. Alright, the Supercross track, the scaling is a little bit small for my liking. The faces, can be a little abrupt just because they are kind of scaled down and kind of small. So it is still a decently fun Supercross track, but it's not that sort of like refined Supercross track feel that you might be used to with like the ARL stuff. So, but overall, I think it's still a decent Supercross track, especially when it's, 50 cents, I guess, if you're thinking about it, for 2 tracks for $1. So while it's not the best Supercross track, I wasn't really expecting it to be, and I still think it's honestly worth the cop just for the Moto track. So this is just icing on the cake. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of This Week in Tracks here in MX Bikes, covering all the tracks that came out for the first week of October 2024. We had some bangers, we had some mediocre ones, as per usual. I'm just stoked, honestly, that we've got so many track creators and people that are getting into track making in the community. And yeah, I hope it continues to go that way. Honestly, having a plethora of tracks to rip on is sweet. So again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in next week's episode.